If only. Words that probably all of us, except maybe those who are real young, have used about situations, circumstances, and things in our lives. Regret. We've all got things in our lives that we regret, that when we think about now, we cringe. It's like, how could I have said that? What was I thinking? Why did I do that? Why did I make that choice? We all love do-overs. We would love to have do-overs for things in our lives where if we could go back, we would do it differently so as not to have whatever the consequences and results that happened at that time. Every one of us. We all have those in our lives. And that's what you see in the gospel. We just heard, if only you had been here, this wouldn't have happened. So let's just we're just going to look at a couple of pieces of the gospel there today. We'll look at that exchange, and then we'll also look at Jesus speaking with Martha about the resurrection. Very interesting. Who meets Jesus? Come on, I just gave her name. Come on, we're quicker than this. Come on. Martha, yeah. And who stayed at home? Very interesting. When we get the other story involved with both of them, who stays at home? Who's the one that comes out to see Jesus? Mary comes out to see Jesus, and Martha's working at the back and gets a little ticked that she's doing all the work and Mary's sitting there listening to everything Jesus is saying. So in this, the roles are reversed. So Martha is the one that comes out. Mary is grieving at the house. And she meets Jesus. And it's interesting, we left out some of the pieces in there, but some of the background is that Jesus was driven out of there. And so he gets the message that Lazarus is dying, and then that Lazarus is dead. And Jesus turns to go back, and some of the apostles and disciples try to dissuade him. And Philip, that's in the piece that we left out from the longer to the shorter version, Philip's the one who Thomas is the one who says, let's go die with him. So when you hear doubting Thomas, it's like Martha. Martha gets a bum rap from the other situation. But here, Martha is the one who has faith. And in this situation, Thomas, who is concerned after the resurrection and doubting Thomas, he's the one who says, let's go die with him. So they go back to where they try to do away with Jesus. Why 4 days? Whenever Scripture gives us details, there's a reason for it. So 4 days. Why 4 days? Anyone know? Jewish people believed that the soul or the spirit, they didn't believe in soul. That's a more recent post-early church development or in the early church. But the Jewish people believed that that we were embodied spirits, and that when we died, that spirit remained in the body for 3 days. Some of you may remember in the way back before Vatican II, we could anoint people and give them the last rites after they died for 3 hours? Because that was somewhat of a similar belief that based in that. So why is it 4 days? What's the gospel saying to us if it's 4 days? He's dead, 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 and dead, no doubt. And that's why you also get, Lord, if you roll away the stone, there's going to be a stench. They had embalming techniques, but not like we have today. So that's the situation Jesus finds himself. So she says to him, if only. She comes out to meet him. If only. So this story, we think about this story often. This is the story of Lazarus being raised from the dead. But it's much more a story about friendship, Jesus' friendship with Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, and what real friendship with Jesus can look like and lead to. And it's also a story about faith in Jesus. And Jesus is clarifying what the resurrection is, the notion that we have today. So she says, if only you had been here. If only. And so Jesus takes that because that's a statement of faith. So it's like, okay, I've got something here to work with. If only. And so he questions, and then they go further. And what she's expressing is regret that the circumstance could have been different if Jesus had been there. And so then Jesus responds to her by talking about the resurrection. Do you believe in the resurrection? And she says yes. But she's talking about the Jewish notion, which was pretty fuzzy. They had some notion of the resurrection. They didn't used to. That's why the scribes and the Pharisees disliked each other. The Pharisees believed in a resurrection of some sort. The scribes didn't. And it went back to the Maccabean days, where you see this notion developing and this understanding. God's expanding their minds as they go along. It's like kids starting out with basic arithmetic and moving along. Okay, now we're getting into math. Now we're getting to advanced math. Now we're getting to, everything builds on as we learn, where our minds expand until we get to non-Euclidean geometry. Any of you ever done that? Parallel lines intersect. It's a three-dimensional thing. Very interesting. Kind of blows all the parameters that we have from the way we've been educated. So Jesus is doing this with her. So he asks the question, do you believe in the resurrection? She gives the Jewish notion. And Jesus does something that's really interesting. The resurrection isn't just this idea. He makes it personal. I am the resurrection. So the resurrection isn't just this thing that happens. The resurrection is now connected to belief in Jesus. It's really interesting what he does. And she expresses that belief, even though she probably doesn't understand what this means. And there's another interesting little twist that happens in this story. So when Jesus calls people to come and follow him, what does he say? When John's two disciples show up and says, are you the one? Or should we expect another? Which is what upset parishioners say to their pastor sometimes. So they come and they say, basically, are you the one? And what does Jesus say to them? Come and see. In other words, don't take my word for it. Come walk with me, look with your own eyes, and make your own decision. And when Jesus says to her, where have you placed him? What does she say? Come and see. So it's a very interesting switch. Jesus calls the apostles and disciples to follow him. And he says, come and see, come live with me, come walk with me, be part of what I am doing in the midst of all this. And here we have a situation where the friendship with Jesus leads to the disciples, Martha in this case, saying, Lord, come and walk with us as we grieve the loss of our brother and your friend Lazarus. That's how discipleship's meant to work. In a sense, we accompany Jesus in what he's doing in the world, and Jesus walks with us as we go through the circumstances of our own life in the world. So Jesus, when he's dealing with Martha, he makes the resurrection very personal. Do you believe? And she believes. And on the basis of that belief, Jesus comes to the tomb. And we get the shortest sentence in the scriptures. This particular version has 3 words. Most of them have 2. Jesus wept. Jesus wept. Why does Jesus weep? It's the humanity of Jesus coming out with the death of his friend. But because he has something to work with in faith, what does he do? He raises Lazarus from the dead. Now Lazarus is going to die again, but he gives him his life back out of love, friendship, affection, and so that people would believe. And we are told that in the scriptures. Many of the people who were there who saw this is something very different. And they believe because Jesus in doing this is doing the work of the Messiah. What does this mean for you and me? How often do we say, if only, to the Lord? If only. And how often, when we go from there, do we go to the point of saying, yes, Lord, I believe, and profess faith in Jesus? And do we ever get to the point of saying, come and see to Jesus come and be part of my life in a very deep way. That's the challenge of the gospel. The encounter with Jesus, professing faith in Jesus, and then inviting him more deeply, ever more deeply into our own lives. A young man I knew some years ago in the Midwest, a very smart guy, a little full of himself. But he was pretty full of himself, got all expenses paid to college, got his degree and so on, met a young woman, married her. Life was wonderful until it wasn't. She said, I'm tired of this, I'm out of here, bye. Chris was a Catholic, but it almost destroyed him. And after a long period of grieving, of self-reflection and so on, he handled it when the key moments came in the right way. He turned to the Lord and he invited Jesus more deeply into his life. And there were some years of healing that had to happen there and other things that needed to happen. And later he met somebody else very different from the person that he was first married to. And things were cleared and they got married and they have a family. But he's a different man. He's not the, how shall we say, supremely self-confident young man that he was. Suffering has tempered him. Suffering and saying yes to Jesus in his life. That's a challenge for you and me from the scriptures today. Whatever's happened in our lives, and we all have those things where, if only, we all want those do-overs. But whatever happened, Jesus wants to be part of our lives more deeply. But just like Martha had to profess faith in Jesus and invite him, we too have to do that. So as we reflect on all this, let's thank the Lord for his great mercy for you and me. Heaven knows we all need it, and more of it. Let's thank the Lord for his mercy, and let us thank the Lord also that he invites us to profess more deeply faith in him. And let us ask him for the grace to say to him, come and see. Come walk with me in my walk as a disciple, in the joys, the griefs, the happiness, the sadness, and everything else that I may have in my life or we have in our lives. And when we do that, who knows the wonderful things God can do for us? He raised Lazarus from the dead. What can he do for you and me?